In a very short time, El Salvador went from being the homicide capital of the world. It went from literally being the most dangerous country in the world to being the safest country in Latin America. It's no longer a promise. It's a reality that Salvadorans are experiencing, and any foreigner can go and see for themselves. In previous stories, Old Man Lin fearlessly challenged Bukele through a message he leaked from prison. This action sparked major upheaval in El Salvador's prisons after the gangs rose up against the entire army. Could this be the beginning of Bukele's downfall? What will happen to El Salvador? Stay until the end of the video and find out. Before starting, leave your registration with the like button and subscribe to our stories. They'll surely catch you. Now, activate the bell so we can begin. The days following Lin's message were a trial by fire for Bukele's government. Menacing graffiti on the streets of San Salvador had unleashed a wave of fear and confusion. The city was on high alert, with police and military patrolling every corner. Bukele knew he couldn't allow Old Man Lin to regain ground in the presidential palace. Bukele met with his security cabinet. The atmosphere was tense. Each member was aware of the gravity of the situation. "Lin is playing with us," Bukele said, his voice firm but laden with concern. "We can't underestimate his ability to destabilize our city. We need a clear strategy to neutralize this threat." Bukele's intelligence team began working tirelessly, analyzing Lin's every possible move. Raids in neighborhoods dominated by the Mara gang were intensified, searching for any clues about the gang's plans. Preventive arrests were ordered, and surveillance in conflict zones was increased. At the same time, Bukele launched a media campaign to assure the Salvadoran people that the government had the situation under control. In speeches broadcast on national network, he promised that Lin would be recaptured and that security would be restored. But behind the scenes, the reality was much more complicated. On the streets, the response of the Mara gangs was swift. The violence increased with coordinated attacks against law enforcement and citizens who strongly supported the government. Clashes were daily, and blood flowed in the streets of San Salvador. Lin, from his hiding place, directed these operations with lethal precision, using violence to sow chaos and openly challenge Bukele. Amid this chaos, people lived in a constant state of fear. Families would lock themselves in their homes at nightfall, fearful of the shootings and raids. Businesses would close early, and the streets would empty at dusk. Fear had gripped the city, and confidence in the government's ability to protect them was faltering. Meanwhile, in hiding, Lin worked tirelessly on his network of contacts inside and outside the prison. This provided him with valuable information, and each day his plans advanced a little more. He knew that to defeat Bukele, he needed not only brute force, but also cunning and strategy. One night, in a secret location on the outskirts of San Salvador, Lin met with his lieutenants. The place was well protected and security was tight. Lin, with his imposing presence, addressed his men. "Bukele thinks he can break us." His voice echoed in the small room, "But we are stronger than that. We will not only survive, we will prosper. Every attack we suffer will be returned with double the force." Bukele's message in the dry land. Security measures were drastically increased. Guards were ordered to show no mercy. The already dark cells became even more claustrophobic. Meals were scarce and of poor quality, and prisoners barely had access to drinking water. Hygiene was almost non-existent, and disease spread rapidly in the unsanitary environment. Physical punishment became routine. Guards beat prisoners for any reason, and the beatings were brutal and constant. Screams of pain echoed through the corridors of the CECOT, creating an atmosphere of terror and hopelessness. Gang members knew that any sign of weakness would be exploited by the guards, who enjoyed their absolute power over the inmates. In an attempt to break the Marabouc spirit, they ordered the implementation of psychological punishments. Prisoners were isolated in solitary confinement cells for days, sometimes weeks, without contact. Loneliness and absolute silence were tortures that many could not bear. The nights became an endless nightmare, with the prisoners' minds slowly tearing apart. Under the pressure, old Lin, despite being in a place separated from most of the prisoners, he was no exception. Although his Zelda was more protected, the guards didn't miss any opportunity to let him know that his situation was desperate. The humiliations were constant and the death threats frequent. Lin, however, didn't break his hatred for Bukele, and his determination for revenge only intensified with each blow and each insult. Meanwhile, in the presidential palace, Bukele planned his next move. He knew that capturing and punishing the Mara wouldn't be enough to win the war. He needed to send a clear and forceful message not only to the gang members, but also to the Salvadoran population. He decided it was time to confront Old Man Lin directly. One night, Bukele summoned his security team and his closest advisors. It's time for Lin to know that he has no way out. Bukele said firmly, "I want this message reaches him, and I want all of El Salvador to see it." The president prepared a recorded message that would be broadcast on national television and sent directly to Lin through clandestine channels. In the message, Bukele appeared with a serious and determined expression. The camera captured his face, illuminated by a dim light that highlighted the determination in his eyes. "Old Lin," Bukele began, his voice resonating with authority. "I know you're listening to this. I know you think you can defy me, that you can evade justice and continue controlling your men from the shadows. But let me be clear, you have no escape." Bukele, he paused, letting his words sink deeply into every move you make. "Every plan you devise, we know. Your time is running out. The punishments you're seeing in the CECOT are just the beginning. I promise you I won't rest until I see you completely defeated. And when that happens, El Salvador will be free of the plague that you and yours represent the message." He concluded with a final warning, "Old Lin, this is your last warning. Surrender now, and maybe, just maybe, you'll find a little mercy if you decide to follow this path. I assure you, you won't have a future. The time of the Mara is over. Peace and security will prevail in El Salvador. This is my promise." Bukele's message was broadcast on all television and radio channels and quickly went viral on social media. The reaction was immediate. Some citizens felt relieved and hopeful, while others feared reprisal from Mara. In the CECOT, the prisoners, including Lin, listened to the president's every word with attention. By the way, if you're enjoying the video, we invite you to give us a like and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new videos. We continue the beginning of the hell of the Mara. The days following Bukele's message were a true hell for the Mara in the El Salvador Confinement Center. The already palpable tension transformed into an atmosphere of absolute terror where any hope of survival quickly evaporated. The guards, emboldened by the president's direct support, unleashed a campaign of unprecedented brutality. The physical punishments became more severe and frequent every day at dawn. The guards conducted inspection rounds that ended in brutal beatings for those who did not comply with the strict rules. The prisoners were forcibly taken from their cells, lined up in the courtyard, and beaten with batons and sticks until their bodies could no longer bear it. Open wounds, bruises, and fractures were common, but medical care was almost non-existent. The already insufficient food rations were further reduced. The prisoners received barely a piece of stale bread and a little murky water a day. The constant hunger weakened their bodies and minds. They became seriously ill, and the weakest did not survive. In addition to the physical punishments, the guards intensified the psychological torture. The prisoners were forced to stand for hours under the scorching sun, not being allowed to move or rest. Those who fainted were revived with buckets of cold water only to continue the torment. The nights were equally terrifying, with loud noises and bright lights that kept the inmates awake and in a state of constant anguish. Old Lin, despite his mental strength, did not escape these punishments. Every day, the guards made sure he received especially harsh treatment. They knew that he was a leader, a symbol of resistance for the Mara, and they wanted to break him. The beatings he received were crueler and more prolonged than ever. Those of any other prisoner. His isolated, dark cell became a torture chamber where he spent most of his time chained and barely moving. Bukele, closely observing the reports on the conditions in the CECOT, decided it was time to directly confront Lin. He wanted to ensure that his message of power and authority resonated not only among the prisoners, but also among all the citizens of El Salvador. One day, while Lin was in his cell, a group of guards entered abruptly without warning. They forcibly dragged him through the corridors of the CECOT. Lin, weakened but with a firm gaze, offered no resistance. He knew this confrontation was inevitable. The guards took Lin to a specially prepared interrogation room. There, in the middle of the room, he was in a metal chair with his arms and legs handcuffed without any delicacy. They forced him to sit down and tied him firmly. The door opened, and Bukele entered, accompanied by an entourage of high-ranking officials and cameras that would capture the moment for posterity. Bukele walked slowly toward Lin, stopping right in front of him. The president's gaze, fixed on him, was cold and determined, while Lin showed silent defiance. UK signaled, and the guards forced Lin to kneel before him. The tension in the room was palpable, and everyone present knew they were witnessing a historic moment. "Old Lin," Bukele began, his voice ringing with authority. "You thought you could defy me, that you could continue controlling your men from the shadows. But look at you now, kneeling and chained. This is your reality and the reality of everyone else." Bukele leaned toward Lin, bringing his face close to the prisoners. "Your reign of terror is over. You will spend the rest of your life in this prison suffering for every crime you have committed, and there is nothing you can do to change that." Lin, with what strength he had left, raised his head and looked Bukele straight in the eyes. "This is not over," he murmured in a hoarse voice. Bukele smiled coldly. "If that Consuelo continues to believe it, but I assure you that you will never again have the power you once had. Your time is over, Lin, and El Salvador will be free from your influence." And so we come to the end of this video. If you liked it, I invite you to give us a like so we can continue making more videos like this. Also, don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any of our new videos. I wish you a great day. Until next time.